So do Badders. If you've not listened to, I can't remember if Sophie's been on once or twice. It feels like twice just because we've met her so many times off camera as such. But if you've not listened to that episode, go and listen to it. It's fantastic. It talks about her experience in running, not just about the most famous picture, but then I guess the fallout plus the upside of that, and on being a kick-ass mum, really. And I'm going to tell you this bit now because we've just been talking, and it will be relevant when we talk later. The last time we kind of spoke at Run Show South, I think, or Run Show, and we then brought it up on the podcast. She was training for things like UTMB or the equivalent with 35-mile weeks in training, and so we're discussing how you can do that. That's how you can do things like UTMB as a mum. But to follow up on that, She Races is the next big project. But welcome to the podcast, Sophie Power. Hey! Sorry, a manic introduction there, but I like to bring people up to context. I'm sure. I mean, the listenership on your episode is so big. I'm sure everyone who's listened to this has already listened to that one. But yes, wow. When did we actually last speak on the poddy? Was it probably a year?
Probably. I think I was recovering from having Saoirse, and I brought out the documentary all about kind of how difficult I found it to return to running after having a baby and the life juggle. I'd done that documentary, so that's probably when I last spoke to you. So I was probably getting back to running, getting back into the longer distance stuff. And then, yeah, I've had a bit of a manic year of training since then.
Because I know one of the discussions we talked about was about how to get children more involved in kind of sport, getting them more active. Is that still something that you kind of continue to be involved with as well?
Absolutely. So I'm still a trustee of Women in Sport, and I'm hugely kind of passionate about kind of children being involved in sport and women, and especially mothers. And I guess for me, then my decisions from there was like, well, how can I inspire people? And that's what's led to, I guess, my most recent news in kind of trying to run at the highest level to show, the girls like me at school who were second last in the mile, that your sporting potential is not set on a cross-country track in year 9.
Yeah, or even whether you could be asked to pretend to actually try when you were young, because a lot of the time you might have had someone incredibly good who just thought, I don't really want to do that, I'm just going to jog at the back.
That wasn't. I desperately wanted to be good at sport at school. I was quite overweight and unfit. I was quite strong there. I think they missed that. But I couldn't have run any faster that day. It's crazy now. I do junior park run with my 4-year-old, and he runs like 10, 20 miling for the junior park run. It's up and down hills. And I mean, I can run that at 14. So it's going to be interesting, like seeing he's on a different trajectory because his parents are involved. Like, if I was on that trajectory, if my parents had got involved, like, where would I be? I'd probably run and then hated it and not run now. So maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah. It's strange, actually, the number of runners I know who discover running in their late 20s, 30s, kind of post other sport, or as you start to get a bit flabby from consuming too much. But there's been, because we've spoken a lot on the podcast recently about a couple of things. One of them is a new study that was showing about the fitness levels of children being substantially worse than adults, weirdly, and particularly children of 20 years ago. But we've also had quite a few conversations around UTMB and them still not changing their policy, but also with all the new qualifiers where you need to do certain races to qualify, ... that given that women are primarily still the main caregivers of the children, I've probably absolutely brutalized the phrase or whatever you're meant to say, that they just are far less likely to be able to run as many races to get the points to then run in these big races. And so we've been trying to think about alternatives to that. But that ties in perfectly with She Races, which we've been wanting to talk about for ages. And then I just was slack on my texting. So apologies to Anna from the running channel for having to hassle me, because we were wanting to do it as soon as we could. But yeah, do you want to talk about how that came about?
Sure, I think it's come from UTMB. I think so. The photo 4 years ago, and the only reason I let that photo kind of go out, and it's quite a personal photo, and obviously it's taken on a life of its own, but was because I should have been able to defer my place for pregnancy. Like, I wasn't fit and ready to race 106 miles whilst 3 months, a 3-month-old baby I was breastfeeding. I mean, it's crazy. And I'd already lost a place in 2014 with my firstborn, and it'd taken me 4 years to get another place. So I hope the photo would just make the organisers change their policy. The huge news is they have now changed their policy 4 years later.
Oh, when that passed me by, was that announced or was that slipped in?
Yeah, so I'll slip that in. So
that's true. I'm not on Instagram.
I guess I've been working on it for 4 years. It's been something I've spoken to the organisers about many times. It's something I was hopeful when Hoka took over the sponsorship end of last year, and it was finally confirmed kind of a few months ago, and it's not been publicly announced. There's nothing in their T's and C's yet, but they will now defer places for pregnancy, which is a huge win, because, as you say, when women, you get all those points and then you get pregnant and then you lose out again, you got to get the points again. It's just such a special race because it's where everyone comes together. It almost shouldn't be owned by anyone because it's kind of Chamonix, it's that week, and there are very few races like it. But you can also say that the city marathons are similar. So now getting the win with London Marathon, which I campaigned for last year to allow kind of women to defer their good for age entries, that's now been that was now allowed, and they've extended that for 3 years this year, which is fantastic. So it's these few kind of wins on getting those changed. And I talked to so many women, and I received so many messages, and I realized that it's not just about pregnancy policies and deferral policies. We need to get more women on the start line, because for me, racing is more than just running. For me, it's racing and being in these events. It's somewhere we can kind of set some goals. We can test our limits. We can get this sense of achievement. Often for mothers and carers, it's that reason to get your run in, because you know that there's this greater goal, and you have this something that's not just, I want some me time, which feels quite kind of selfish, which it shouldn't do, but often it does. It's, I'm working towards this. And it really kind of sets a great example to our kids who want to get fit. So for me, racing's really important. And especially on the longer events, there aren't many women on the start line. Certainly in ultras, it's less than 20%. UTMB, it's less than 8%. Even without the pregnancy deferral policy.
Great.
But there are so many, and we're brilliant endurance runners. So for me, it's like looking at races and saying, how do we get more women on the start line? Now, there's obviously a societal thing, and kind of we are the main caregivers, and we can't fix all that. But what we can fix are the races themselves. We can remove those barriers to being on the start line for women. We can look at the imagery that puts us off, the lack of logistics there, the pregnancy deferral policies, the kind of the making it sound like we can do it, the biggest, baddest, toughest race, rather than these are the paces you need to run at to get to the finish. And then the experience we have on the race, kind of, let's get rid of those unisex t-shirts that kind of look at us as second-class citizens. I mean, I did a post about it, and I tried all mine on when I was 37 weeks pregnant, and they fit beautifully. But sanitary towels at checkpoints, just having enough toilets for us, safety at night, making sure there's a mix of women and men there. And then at the end of the race, valuing our competition. So splitting out results so we can see the female podium, putting as much effort into reporting the women's results as the men's results, and equal prize money, equal placements, equal podiums, equal age categories. It's not rocket science. It's all very simple, but too many races aren't doing it. And the races are, surprise, surprise, they've got a great balance of women and men. So She Races came about really as a set of guidelines to race directors to say, this is how you're fully inclusive of women. And so many race directors said, I just didn't think about all these things, and they've put things in practice. So what we've done is say you sign up to a basic kind of agreement that you'll try and make your race inclusive as far as reasonably possible. And we'll pop you on the website so that women can find a race that really has them in mind. And it's no cost to race directors. This is basically a charity that I'm kind of funding so far, and hoping to get some sponsorship to really drive it. But it's all about getting women that amazing feeling of crossing that finish line, and really kind of that gives them the power to go throughout the rest of their lives.
And I know last time we spoke, actually, it was part of the reasons why you had been able to do things like UTMB is because you almost approached it as a family, as opposed to, it wasn't mummy's going off to do this thing. It was the family are supporting mum in taking on this challenge. And therefore, what do we, how does dad need to pick up some slack in some places? How are we all moving it together? And I think it's a really important part as well is actually to have children see their mums kicking ass as well, and taking on challenges and being inspirational rather than just a caregiver in their eyes.
It's huge. I mean, it's especially now I have a daughter, and Women in Sport done a huge piece of research on children and kind of the attitudes of sport, and seeing all these girls that don't feel sporty relative to boys at such a young age. And I went into my 7-year-old's kind of infant school to talk about running, and kind of my son believes that women are far better at running than men. I mean, I love the Euros because he turned around to me and goes, Mum, can boys be as good at football as girls? And it really changes mind on things. The more women we see running and doing these things, the more our daughters can see that, sport really is for girls. It's for everyone. And I guess with the imagery on races, when someone who's just started running, who maybe kind of has started running to lose a bit of weight, or kind of sees all these start line images of white, skinny men, unless you see yourself in that image, in that marketing, you don't feel you belong. And I see races and I'm like, well, I'm not welcome there. I'm a woman. I think so many people see that. So if we change it and we make it see all kinds of people on those start lines, kind of crossing the finish lines, then everyone believes that they belong.
And do you get a sense of things like UTMB or the like, what the because you said 8% of runners were women. Do we get a sense of what the application numbers are as well? Because there's obviously, if they wanted to go 50-50, could they right now? And do you get a sense that part of it is that the application process just seems so unlikely that it's putting people off applying? Or
I think UTMBs are different. I think it's so different to get the points and get through it, and they're the harder races. So we need women moving up to the points races. But interestingly, so we found with She Races, we did a massive survey of almost 2,000 women, and we found kind of almost 90% of women are more likely to sign up for a race that shows they're inclusive to women. And interestingly, UTMB have done their own survey recently. The results aren't published yet, but I was talking to them, and they're trying to get more women on their start lines because they've realized that they're going to start, they've got all these races out in the world that aren't overscribed like UTMB is, and they're missing out on 50% of the running population by not having them inclusive. So they're asking these women who are trail runners that haven't stepped up to 30 kilometers plus, what are you thinking? And it's interesting and it's fantastic to see that progress, and they're trying to work out why women aren't doing it. And we know from our survey there are so many barriers in place, and we can't fix the family side, as we can show men that the other partners and the family around us how they can support us. And that's really important, because I think a lot of partners, kind of ones who've messaged me, have said, I didn't realize after having our children that I went back to my running and my wife didn't, and I just didn't think she didn't want to do it. I thought she didn't want to do it anymore, and didn't realize that there are things such as pelvic health that get in the way. There's things like mother's guilt, that you've got to support them actively back, and that's what can help us get back. And my husband's been amazing, really understanding that running is important for me. So there's those, understanding what we can do outside it with the races themselves. They're easy fixes, and the race directors that have kind of joined She Races have made really simple changes, that they just didn't realize that their pictures were all of men. They didn't realize that it'd be really helpful to show where the toilets are. So Camino Ultra did a brilliant thing where they don't have any actual, their races are in London, so they don't actually have any portaloos that can put out, but they put a map of where all the loos are en route, which is brilliant, because then you're like, right, okay, I feel I can go and do this race.
So interesting. So is that a really big obstacle to some people then, that fear of being caught short on the route?
I mean, for women, if you're on your period doing an ultra marathon, you're going to need to change a tampon, or drain a mood cup. You don't want to do that behind a bush. You can't do that behind a bush, in a kind of really public place. And it's a huge barrier. If you're I've struggled with my pelvic floor since having children. You need to go to the toilet more often when you're running. And it's not just women that have these issues, it's also men. We need to be more considerate of the issues people have and think, how can we fix it? We can't put portaloos up mountains. No, but can we think about having proper provisions on a start line? Yes. Can we think about having aid stations have kind of sanitary provisions? Because you often get caught short, and often I found it's always happening to me in an ultra. I'm not expecting my period, it comes early. And it happened to a lady recently, and she was mid-trail ultra, and she had to actually pull out the race because she didn't have anything and she still had several hours to go. So it's really simple, if you ask women what they want and get female feedback. And so what I guess we do with She Races is, I realised I was reaching out to lots of organisers and saying, this person has given me this feedback on this race, so you don't have this policy, could we get a deferral, could we do this? And I was like, I can't do this anymore, I've got 3 kids. What I need to do is empower women and men to go to races when they see something that can be improved, send the race organiser our guidelines, read through them, say this could be better, and do it themselves. And that has a greater impact because it's someone that's actually running the race. But it also means we can get to so many more races and know that, we'll have more people on the start line. I mean, one example I had last week was there was a fell race, and there was a lady, a V50, that looked at the cutoffs and thought, I'm not going to make the cutoffs, but I really want to race. And so she spoke to the organizer, and they didn't want to make the cutoffs longer because you've got safety of people on the mountain. But what they did was they let people start, if they wanted to, an hour earlier. So the checkpoint times didn't change. The overall time didn't change for kind of the people out there, but they had an extra cutoff. They opened the registrations for next year, and they got so many more kind of women and men kind of in the V50, V60 categories just because of that. That was the barrier to them. She's gone to the race organizer, and that's enabled so many more people to run that race. So it's these small changes that you think you're just doing it and you don't want to be annoying because you're a woman and you don't want to ask, but knowing that you're going there, you're actually helping so many other people that are going to sign up for that race or have a much more comfortable experience on the race. So it really is about empowering others. And if everyone can tell everyone they know about She Races and think about the races they're going to do, the races they've done, chat to the organisers, between us, we can make such a difference for women and really raise the inclusivity of running, not just trail running, but all running.
So is there a checklist then on the website of suggestions for races of what they can implement?
Absolutely. So I wrote it with a lot of feedback from the survey, from people's experiences, talking to a lot of race directors about what they do. It's not perfect. We don't have all the answers, and we're always looking for improvement. So if people read it and go, I think that's unreasonable, or actually you could do it this way, or here's another idea, please get in touch. Send me a message on Instagram at she.races or ultra_Sophie, and I can edit the guidelines. But we've kind of broken it down into those kind of level the start line, kind of improve the experience of the race, and respect our competition. And there's nothing in there. We're really aware that, races are expensive to put on, and everyone's got rising input costs. So it's simple things that can be done by races. And there's obviously a lot more you'd be doing if you're a kind of ultra in the middle of nowhere compared to a 5K road race. Like, you're not going to have safety trackers on a 5K road race. But there are things for race organisers to, almost like a lens, to look at their race through and go, I could actually change this small thing, or I could put some more information on my site. So we ask the organisers that sign up, and it's all free, to just put a little piece on their site about how they meet the guidelines, or how they welcome women, or who to call. One race, kind of Rick at Phoenix, he's put some independent women that run his races quite frequently in charge of keeping him in check and looking at the race through a fresh set of eyes, and he's had some brilliant changes in that, and that's a great thing that race organisers can do, because it's hard to see your race from a participant's eyes when you're the director and you live and breathe it every day.
And have you come across any genuine challenges of races where they've come back to you and pushed back, and you thought, I get that, actually that's quite hard for us to really break down certain barriers? Are there any things that you think are going to be harder to resolve?
Oh, that's a good question. I think some of the toilet provision is difficult in the middle of nowhere, and I think you're not trying to make these races soft. That's the last thing we want. It's making them kind of accessible, and I think if you're saying that people have to taking away some of the qualifying, well, you don't want to do that, because you need people to qualify for it. So really nothing is unreasonable. I think kind of getting to 50-50 and asking for that, I think, is unreasonable, because there are more men running the endurance events. Some of those barriers are societal barriers. It's not the race director's fault that kind of women aren't kind of running as much. They can do everything to open up their race, but we do see some of the races getting to near 50-50 that are the more inclusive, because women are kind of flocking to those. But it's very little. I think it's I think there's ones that say, unisex t-shirts are cheaper. I mean, for most races, you shouldn't be having t-shirts anyway, because most of them go to landfill, and you should be offering a kind of a trees not teas option, or a local charity option. But that's been the only one. That's I mean, some of the major marathons, like London Marathon, still have those awful unisex t-shirts. But really, on that, I mean, there's no additional cost. I'm trying to think of kind of. I've had so many conversations, and they've all been so positive, because race organisers want more people on the start line.
I mean, the t-shirt thing's almost a dirty, unspoken of secret, where they need it really for sponsors more than anything else, because it's, if you're Flora or Virgin or whoever's sponsoring the marathon, it's then your logo on a top that will be run in by 50% of the participants. And so the finances of that are probably discussed less than necessarily they should be, just because people don't really want to say, oh, we're only doing it for the money here. It's not actually, and the perceived value of a t-shirt as well versus the cost to you. But with one of the suggestions we've had to do with races where it does require you to qualify and you then have the draw, is to, in the same way something like Western states, the more you apply, the heavier the weighting of your application, is to then weight towards women so that they're more likely to get their places.
That is being done,
understandably,
in some races.
So, and what, because there is the other side of the coin where there's, say you're a male who's run lots, who's got all these points, who'll be frustrated that they can't get in either, versus, and they'd see that almost as, it is discriminatory against them. What would you say to people in that position who are wanting to do something, they've followed all the rules, and they're now not being able to do it because they're a man.
And I think kind of we haven't put positive discrimination in there as a must-have. I think it's a great idea in some of the longer races, and it is now done. I think kind of Lakeland do it in their ballot, and to some extent, because you've got to think for those races, you've got to qualify. Women have already jumped through a few hoops to even get into that ballot. So kind of increasing the ability for women to succeed in that ballot is only really rebalancing it to kind of the start. It's a really difficult one. And I think kind of looking at the amount of years a woman can actually enter the ballot because of pregnancy, recovery, kind of making it overall that we are equally likely to succeed involves giving us a higher weighting in the ballots we actually get to enter. It's a difficult topic, and I think it's stretching on some things. I think She Races, kind of what the organisers we want them to sign up to, is really the absolute obvious things that make sense for equality. And what I want to do is and there's some great kind of groups out there encouraging women to trail run more, giving them the confidence, the map reading skills. Can we break down all those barriers so we get more women in the ballots in the first place, and then winning our places on those start lines, and showing just how good we are at endurance running?
Yeah, and I think actually one potential solution around it as well that probably feels a bit fairer is just to allow, say there are points accumulated, to allow females to accumulate them over a longer period, because they are going to have those breaks where they are having babies, they're raising kids, and so I do think that someone who's run a race of a higher enough quality 3 years ago, that's still valid for being able to race a race next year, because it shows you've got the ability and the desire to train yourself up to that level. So I don't think you need to lose that. Even if your physical fitness has dropped down, I don't think many people would enter a UTMB or equivalent and take it lightly. So, but in terms of transitioning onto something else that we'd said before, so last time we were amazed by how successful you'd been based off the relatively low number of miles you'd been running. Now you're now flipping that on its head, I believe.
So I guess I was running about 35 weeks. Most of my running has been while I was working very, very long hours and just not taking it seriously, running just enough to get around races. So, and I guess some of the races are quite big. I mean, Spartathlon's a difficult race, and I think I did 37 miles a week on average for the 6 months before, which for a 153-mile non-stop race in 36 hours is on the low side. But so when I had Saoirse, I knew that she was my last, like my third baby, my last, and I had such a struggle to get back. And my coach, Edwina Sutton's amazing, and she's just like, what do you want to do now? And I wanted to get fit and strong again, and so I ran my first London Marathon last year, and was feeling really good, and started kind of getting much stronger. And I said, I want to aim for a 24, and I said, I want to aim to run for Great Britain, because I've just turned 40 and I've got 3 kids, I've got a prolapse, and I was second last in mine at school. And if I can run for Great Britain, what is that going to show all the other girls out there, all the other mums out there, all the other people that didn't feel sport was for them because they were rubbish at school? And so that was in my head. It's like, that's what I want to do. And it's come around a bit quicker than I expected, because I'm racing with a GB vest in Verona next week. But it's been a case of, let's train really smart. Let's train hard. My husband has been amazingly supportive. We have juggled and multitasked to the max on absolutely everything to try and fit in that extra training. And so I've been on about 50 miles going up to my last couple of weeks of 65. And with a bit of strength training, with a bit of spinning, that's all my body can handle, all I need to handle. That's enough. And yeah, so I'm kind of in the shape of my life. I ran a half marathon last weekend, the London half, for my friends at kind of Femme Foundry. Had a party afterwards, and they're like, "Come and talk, and why don't you run?" So I ran, and then I realised that I could run a bit faster than I thought, and got a sub 90 on a 2 days after a 20-mile run. So I'm running a bit faster
Oh
than I
wow!
used
Congrats.
to, which is really exciting.
And where would you say, like because when's the last time you trained to be fast rather than train to run far?
I've never done it. I mean, this is the 9 years. For the last 9 years, I've been trying to get pregnant, recovering from pregnancy. I've never, or then injured. I've never ever had a whole year of consistent training. And what's really exciting is that I've only now had 1 year. Kind of where could I go in 2 years? And now I think being finally beyond children, maybe it's like BC beyond children. I'm really excited. I mean, the world record holder for 24 hours is the amazing Camille Herron, and she's 40 as well, and she's only getting better. So for all the women out there, just because you're not breaking, maybe you won't break your 5K time anymore. I mean, I've never raced a 5K. Mine's my park run, and it's muddy and hilly. But there's no reason your marathon time can't get better. Your ultra marathon time can't get better as you get older. You have women over 50 that win a lot of these longer races. We get so many skills as mothers as we get older, as women as we get older, that are just so relevant to managing our body through these really tough events.
I mean, if someone's running a marathon PB, unless they've focused on 5K when they were younger, they're going to be faster at 5K as well, without a doubt, just because of their running economy and everything. But what would you say? Because it's after children, post children as such, but the kids are still around. So how have you done that in terms of what have you changed that's made the most impact in your training? But how have you managed your time and your schedule? And have you got any little secrets for how you've managed to do that while still having the kids?
I think it's really optimizing the hell out of your week and everything you're doing. So for me, I know that I train well in the morning. I train after the drop-offs, and there's a lot of my life that is I do 20 miles a week on my feet doing school and nursery drop-offs. A lot of it carrying a 12-kilo child on
So
my
that's
back.
4 miles a day. Okay.
That's what it is. So, and we walk everywhere. So we walk to the junior park run in Saturday. We'll walk to their rugby droppers. We walk as much as we can. So that's part of training, really.
Yeah.
And if you can't get a recovery run in, but you can get the school run in and walk it a bit faster, that's part of it. Definitely I've got to go and drop you somewhere, but I could take you in the running buggy and then leave the running buggy there, then do a run, then get you home. Or we're going somewhere at the weekend. I'm like, brilliant, get my OS app out. Can I run there and meet the kids there? And maybe organise my husband wants to run back or put his bike in the car and cycle. I mean, I don't watch TV. I work late at night. I think I've been probably burning everything at every single end for the last few months, and I need to take some time out. I don't think, especially with the She Races launch, which has been, we did on 1st of June, and it's just been overwhelming. And I could work on that 24 hours a day, and I see how much impact it's already having, but I just don't have the resource to do it. And I have to every now and then prioritize sleep. But it really is just thinking and doing the multitasking. Like, you've got to get the strength work in, but no, who's got half an hour to do strength work? But if the kids are watching TV or they're with you, like they're in the park, you can get your lunges in, you can get your stretches in. They'll jump on my back to do planks. I can do squat press with my daughter. You can get mini workouts in just little and often through the week, and it all really adds up.
And how do they respond to this? Are they as excited about it, and do they understand the kind of joint mission as such?
Oh, they're my boy. They love it. I mean, we love Junior Park Run. My 4-year-old is brilliant. He's just no fear. He just goes for it. He's so competitive. My 7-year-old runs around and has a chat with his best mate. It's lovely. No, they love coming home. They love tracking the races. My 7-year-old really understands what it is, how far it is, and they're really proud. And it's all he's kind of talked about, kind of when I got the vest through, and he's looking at the kit and trying on the kit, and he's just like, this is really big. So it's amazing to have him behind me, and I guess with my daughter, I just know that she's just going to have a very different vision of what she can achieve because she sees me, and something I never had, and that for me is, a real driver to do it, is to inspire her and to inspire kind of her friends and to show them. So yeah, it's huge. I mean, my son's new teacher, I think it's the only first thing she heard. He's like, my mum's running for Great Britain. But it's really cool. And I may never get selected again. I may get injured and be out for years and burn out and whatever. But I think it's still a huge thing that I'll look back on and be really proud of.
And do you think, because it sounds almost as if this is a change is as good as a break almost, or whatever the phrase is, the fact you're doing this different training now, do you think it is sustainable to be doing this for kind of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that level of mileage and that level of focus on running?
I think it is.
With I think all the other things spinning around.
I think a lot of runners do run that mileage, and it's really quite seamlessly fitted into the week now. I mean, there's no downtime. I mean, my downtime has got to be my run time. I don't remember last time I watched TV that wasn't a kind of the Euro football matches or a bit of athletics. But I've been on the treadmill doing that. So that's all gone. And I'm willing to give that up. I think you move along a spectrum. I've taken my diet a bit more seriously and really properly kind of learning to fuel. I've been wearing one of the Super Sapiens monitors and really learning how I fuel my day so I can get the best out of myself. So those really, the important sessions to do properly really do count. So just trying to optimize everything. So I think that part really is sustainable. And I'm really enjoying it. I think if I started to put lots of pressure on, then it wouldn't be what I do for fun. So I don't want to do that. And I think I do hear from people going, I want to go a minute quicker in the marathon. I want to break this barrier. And I found that sounds really stressful to me. When you're focused on the outcome rather than the process, it's got to be about the training, the lifestyle, the getting progressively better. You can't control what happens on a day, and you can't kind of rate your entire training process and year just on a number at the end of a race, whether that's a placing, whether that's a time. I think that really undersells all the effort that goes into running, because it's so much more than that.
And are you having to, you talked a bit about your diet while you train, are you having to actually reassess your nutrition for race day, because you're going to be putting your body through kind of a higher level of stress than you would have done in your other races? Sadly,
yes. So I used to run ultras on cake. Just cake, pretty much. Bit of flapjack, that's kind of cake too, isn't it? I wasn't as running as fast. So I'd be kind of, walking a lot up the hills on some of the flats and being able to digest that. I can't digest it like that anymore. I think the intensity going up has meant that I've gone to having a bit more energy drink, working Velo Forte, because I like tasty food, but I need it to be sports appropriate. So their bars and their chews. I love their chews. There's this cherry flavour I have to hide it because I just actually munch them in the house. And you can't do that if you're not on a run. That's been brilliant, and getting some real advice from the PH guys on how much to fuel, especially in the end of the 24. So hopefully we'll be able to crunch numbers and and give some insight to everyone else on how to fuel a 24. But it's become a lot more scientific. It used to be, well, I'll start and I'll run a couple of hours until I'm hungry. Then I have a big hunger cake, and then I'll see what I feel like at the next aid station. And now it's like, okay, it's half a bar within 30 minutes, and then try and get as much in as I can until I know that my gut will not be happy, and make sure I've kind of given myself a bit of a lead on the fueling side. So yeah, it's a lot less fun now. It really is. I used to really enjoy all the cake. I have the cake after the race now instead.
And actually, I know you mentioned about how it's about the journey and not the results, but it'd be interesting to see if you feel that way after the race day, where you've got that massive pressure, really, and it's all relative, because you are racing against individuals for your team. So whether that changes your experience or not,
I think for me, I'm not really an individual racer, so I don't get that excited about winning in podiums. I don't think my favourite races have ever been ones that I've placed particularly well at, or even kind of won. But I really like running for a team. I think that's what motivates me more than anything. Kind of, I think annoying people, blokes that don't want to let you past. I'll sprint finish against them just to prove a point. I do that on parkrun quite a few times. But yeah, the only other sprint finish I ever had was on cross country, because I was running for my local my club, Guildford and Godalming, and there was a picture of my face, and I was like, I've never looked like that. But I was really trying to make up a few places. So I think the team element for me is really exciting, because I think I'll do the best if I'm part of a team, rather than if I was just competing for myself. People are driven by different things, but fighting for others is definitely something that's important for me.
Amazing. Well, if people want to get involved in She Run, because I'm sure there will be some people out there who hopefully have a bit of time, but if not, who have some races in mind that they'd like to approach to make them more female friendly, what's the best way for them to do that?
So our website is sheraces.com. Or Instagram.
Did I say She Runs? Whoops, I keep on saying.
I actually Google that, you might get that. So the website is sheraces.com, and Instagram she.races. You find everything up there, sign up there. And please just think of the race organisers, send them a link to the guidelines, read them, please give me any feedback on them. And if kind of you go to race organiser and you're encountering trouble, let me know, and that's when we'll send them a bit of a nudge. But generally, they're just really grateful for the feedback, and happy to make the changes. And then it's just brilliant that knowing that there's all these women out there that are making a change for other women, and we're really proud to have started that.
And hopefully, it will become a point where the tipping point where actually it will just become standardized, and there'll be so few races left to approach that it will almost become null and void. Fingers crossed.
And that's my goal, is that it doesn't exist. I mean, that this is something that you want. Okay, my goal is that She Races isn't there, and maybe we can then get to pivot to somewhere we're encouraging more women to get involved in the first place, and tackling those other barriers. But at the moment, there's a lot to do. We're quite under-resourced. If I trained a bit less hard, I'd have more time for She Races. This is the issue. So we're hoping to get some sponsorship, to get some resource, just to help us kind of have that greater reach. And we're seeing, just on minimal input, it's already having a huge change. So we're really excited about seeing what can happen in the next year or so.
Amazing. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for the amazing work you've done with She Races, and good luck in representing GB in the coming weeks. Can't wait to hear how it goes.
Oh, thanks for having me. Nice chatting to you again.
My pleasure. Thanks. And if people want to follow you personally, what's the best way for them to?
So I am ultra_Sophie, and it's generally kind of there'll be some fairly epic flat lays on it for the 24. And so I'm going to go through, because I kept the GB thing a bit quiet. I'm going to go through a bit more of my training and questions, but especially when you have any questions about anything from pelvic floors to prolapses to juggling, send me a message, and I really do try and get to them all, because I know how important it is to have some guidance. And yeah, I've got no filter, so I'll tell you as it is. It's a bit worrying.
Amazing. Well, thanks again, Sophie. Good luck in the 24 hour.
Thank you.
Fuck you, buddy.